This common injury can be caused by a fall or an impact, such as knees hitting the dashboard in a car accident. Patella fractures are usually treated with pins and a tension band that's wrapped tightly around the bone. FYI, the patella increases the power of the quad muscles by increasing leverage. Losing your kneecap means losing 15 to 20% of the strength potential in your quad muscles.
Dislocated shoulder is a very common sports injury. It's treated by sedating the patient and manipulating the joint back into place. This injury, like any other dislocation, must be treated immediately. Skull fractures may result from a blow to head. They can sometimes be associated with an underlying brain injury that may require immediate surgical treatment.
Compact bone, also known as cortical bone, is made up of osteons which create the bone matrix surrounding the central haversian canal. Its function is to provide strength and protection to both our bones and body. In compact bone, the haversian canal is a series of microscopic tubes that provide the main pathway for blood supply. Without it, the bone tissue wouldn't be able to live. Osteocytes regulate the formation of new bones through bone reformation, and canaliculi are small channels that allow for the exchange of nutrients and waste products. Both bone trabeculae and bone marrow are present in the cross-section of spongy bone. Bone trabeculae form network of trabeculae, which are thin, either plate or rod shapes that form the spongy network in bones. Bone marrow is what's responsible for producing blood cells, such as platelets.
Two obvious structures that can be seen in our sponge bone tissue through the microscope are the bone marrow and trabeculae. The bone marrow is the white circles that are surrounded by the pink-colored trabeculae.
In our other picture of spongy bone under the microscope, we can see how the bone trabeculae forms networks in spongy bone.
Now we'll be moving on to the categories of bones.
Here's our base skeleton. The first type of bone that we're going to be talking about is the irregular bone, which is a bone that has a unique shape that doesn't fit into the other three, and an example of this is the vertebrae.
The next type of bone is the long bone. The long bone has a shaft and two ends, and it's longer than it is wide, and one example is the femur.
The next type is flat bones. Flat bones are two layers of compact bone with a layer of spongy bone in between, and they have a broad and flat surface, and an example is the pelvic girdle. The last type of bones is short bones. Short bones are roughly as wide as they are long, and they contain mostly spongy bone. An example of this are the carpals. So here's our question about bones. What is the composition of a flat bone? A flat bone is composed of two layers of compact bone separated by spongy bone. Like we discussed earlier, the femur is a type of long bone. The femoral head and neck are proximal to the point of attachment, which would be the hips, while the other end is distal from the point of attachment. There's one side which is lateral and further away from the midline. And then what connects the femoral head and femoral neck to the most distal part of the femur is called the shaft. Going into more details, first off we have the condyles. These are often part of your joints. Intra-articular structures are usually located within your joints and help stabilize them, while extra-articular structures are outside of your joints and are supporting structures. The trochanteric region is right below your hip and helps with hip mobility. Each epiphysis on both ends contains red bone marrow. The metaphyses connect the epiphyses to the diaphyses. This is where bone growth occurs. The diaphyses is the shaft that connects everything together.
Now we will be talking about bone fractures. The first type of fracture is a spiral fracture, which happens when your bones are broken in twisting motion. The next type is a transverse fracture, which is a broken bone that runs in a straight line across. A comminuted fracture is where the bone is broken into at least two pieces.
Sometimes when a fracture is too severe, you might get a metal plate screwed into one of your bones. For example, this femur has a transverse fracture. This example is showing us how the metal plate is screwed onto the most lateral part of the femur.